Well, welcome back. Wasn't that a beautiful song? I don't know about you, but if you're not really appreciating yourself right now, well, maybe we'll just go back and do that song again. Guess what? You could do that song as much as you want because we are broadcasting and you can rewatch this anytime. So I am Reverend Alice, and I'm happy to be here with you this morning. And I want to say, I miss you. I miss seeing you. I miss being with you. If you're on Facebook or if you're watching on Zoom or on YouTube, give us a shout out in the comments. Let us know you're there. It's our way to connect right now until we can be in person again. I do want to talk a little bit about a class that I'm starting this week called The Mental Equivalent. And I have a really heavy book that we're going to be working from. It's a pamphlet. It's just a pamphlet, so the reading's not too heavy. It's called The Mental Equivalent, and it is available in the public domain, or you can get a little pamphlet. You could join us for this class. The really wonderful thing about this class is it doesn't matter whether you're trying to create something specific or if you're wanting to have just a general sense of peace or well-being, like everything in between. When we work with the process of creating the mental equivalent, what happens is we begin to create the form so that spirit can pour itself through our life. And so the sky's the limit. I hope you'll join us. If you are interested in taking the class, I really need to hear from you today. You can go on the website and you can register, or you can email me directly at alice@cslsantacruz.org. Well, here we are, it's March, right? The first Sunday in March, and we're starting a new monthly theme, Open to Possibilities. And one of the really fun things that we're going to be talking about all month is looking at the beautiful and amazing practice of visioning. Now, if you were in the room, I'd say, how many of you know what visioning is? But I can't really see your hand, so maybe you'll say something in the comments. Maybe you think you know what visioning is. I want to talk about it a little bit. And when we look at this idea of being open to all possibilities, well, right in our centering statement, we have that beautiful idea that we are transforming lives in the world through possibility thinking. And so when we talk about possibility thinking, we're not just talking about positive thinking. We're talking about a creative download and unification with spirit that moves through us in wonderful and unique and surprising ways sometimes. And visioning is a process that can really unlock that. And like anything, it's a practice, and it's called a practice because the more you practice it, the better you get at it. One of the, if you've heard the term visioning, you might equate it to visualization or possibly vision statements. Visualization is a little bit different. It's sort of like probably if you were an athlete. This is where most of us have heard of that visualization process. If you were an athlete and you were training and you were doing all the things that you needed to do to be able to compete well, you could also visualize seeing yourself cross the finish line and finish first and finish fast and finish strong. Well, the thing about visualization is that we take an idea that we already have, and we create a visual prototype of it that we can look towards. And it helps us and aids us in working with what we already know. It's not visioning. And a vision statement is when we have a big idea about what we want to experience, either individually or in an organization. And so we'll hold this highest idea. We'll continue to look towards it like our true north. We'll measure the things that we do to see if it's in alignment with our vision statement. But we're still working with an idea that we already hold, something that we already know within ourselves, something that we believe. And it's not visioning. So I want to talk a little bit about what visioning is. Visioning is revelation practice. And when I say revelation, I mean that we are revealing something that already exists, but that we aren't aware of. And so this practice of visioning allows us to tap into a mystical process. It allows us to tap into the divine mind that wants to experience itself through our own unique gifts and talents. And so when we're visioning, we're really opening ourselves up, creating a container. I was thinking as Sky was praying that beautiful prayer, I had this vision, right? I know what it looks like. So I had this vision in my mind of Santa Cruz, and you'll appreciate this. It was like the curl of the wave, right? It creates the container to hold the surfer for the ride, right? But the surfer doesn't know exactly how the ride's going to go. He's relying completely on the power of the water. He's relying completely on the power of the wave to carry him forward. And when I think about visioning, it really is about tapping into a power we can't create on our own. It's about tapping into a power that's greater than us. I remember going to the religious science church in LA, the first church of religious science, and on the wall was a plaque of that beautiful statement that Ernest Holmes is famous for saying, and if you've been around this movement any time, you've heard it 100 times at least, and it is that there is a power for good in the universe greater than you, and you can use it. So when we're talking about visioning, we're really talking about that there's a power for good in the universe greater than you, and it can use you. So I want to frame this in something you might be familiar with already, the kingdoms of consciousness. So if we could change the slide, please. You're probably familiar with this little table. And if you're not, the kingdoms of consciousness is really different aspects of the one consciousness and how we relate to it and experience it. So sometimes we have an experience where perhaps you get a diagnosis or something breaks down and you're feeling like a victim. Well, that would be we would oftentimes experience kingdom one consciousness. Maybe not for long, but probably for a second or two, depending upon where you are and how calm you are and how at peace you are with what's going on in your life, or maybe how resourced you are. And, I don't know about you, but in the times of my life when I haven't had a lot of resources, it's been a little harder to be all peace, love, and light when things go south. And so Kingdom One is that experience when we forget and we feel like things are being done to us. Kingdom Two is that place where we begin to understand our power and we begin to feel very empowered in the world, and we begin to have greater confidence, and we understand the gifts that we've been imbued with, and we exercise them. It's a really juicy place, but it's still a place of I'm doing something to something else. Well, maybe I'm showing up really big for work, or maybe I'm getting into a relationship with this other person. It's still dualistic. When we move into Kingdom 3, this is when we begin to understand the mystical reality of spirituality and God and how it is looking for an outlet. And so that quote that I shared from the church in LA, Kingdom 2 is indicative of the original quote. There's a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. A power for good in the universe greater than you, and you can use it. And then Kingdom 3 experience that we might have with consciousness is when we're really in the flow, where we really know that we're absolutely filled with grace. Things are just happening almost without us needing to make them happen. Life becomes very effortless. And this is what I mean when I changed that quote around a little bit and turned it around to there is a power for good in the universe greater than you, and it can use you. Spirit and you are in alignment, and you begin to allow yourself to be used by Spirit, but not like being used up by somebody else for somebody else's good, but because you and Spirit are in such alignment that your good just comes to you. And so I want to tell you a little story about visioning for me. And if we can change the slide back to the talk camera. Thank you. I will never forget the day. I came up in a beautiful, loving community in Baltimore. I got my license, and I was there for probably the first 4 or 5 years of my ministry. I was very active and involved. I was a staff minister. I was on the board. I was the treasurer. And I still to this day have a very fond place in my heart for them. And I was doing this visioning process from time to time, depending upon what was going on. It was one of my practices. And I will never forget the day that I was sitting in the audience, and like right in the middle of the talk, it was as if somebody tapped me on the shoulder and whispered in my ear, "It's time to leave." It's like, what? You want me to leave my family? But it instantly became clear to me that it was time for me to leave. I had been a big part of that community. They had a new minister. She was strong and on her platform, and I needed to make more room for other community members to come up and to really stand in their power. And I didn't really know where I was going, and I called a colleague of mine that was a state over. I was in Maryland at the time. She was in Jersey. And I asked her if I could move my license there. I kind of thought I might want to go to a church or start a church, but I didn't want to start one walking out of this beloved community. I didn't want to take anything from the beauty and the power of this community that I had. So I knew it was the right thing to move my license a little bit further away while I figured things out. Well, let me tell you, the moving your license in our movement usually takes a little bit of time. Well, it took 2 weeks, and my license was moved like that. And I spent some time with that community, a couple of months. And at the same time, I had a day job. I had a tax practice. And my practice was in half of this large building on Main Street where I lived, and the other half of the first floor was an art gallery. And Larry was owned the art gallery, and a couple months after this happened, he started coming over to me and saying, you really ought to rent my space. I'm like, why would I want to do that? He said, well, you said you wanted an extra office. I think you should really rent my space. I looked at him like he had two heads, but he kept coming over. He would come over and, have lunch, and he'd say, you really ought to rent my space. I'm like, I don't have time to do that. Come the time he was about to leave the gallery, my landlord called me, and she said, I understand you're going to rent my space. And I'm like, what? She said, yeah, don't you want to start a church? I know you're a minister. And it was like suddenly everything fell into place. And I told her I wouldn't be able to start for 6 months. If you could give it to me rent-free for 6 months, we could do some renovations, and then I could start. She said, sure. Like it just happened. And from then on, everything fell into place. The people came forward. The space was renovated. We got some beautiful furniture. I mean, everything began to fall in place. The thing that I was doing the whole time was holding the highest idea for my ministry. How could I serve the best? How could I really be that place where Spirit showed up in a big way? So when we do this thing called visioning, what we're doing is we're creating that container. We're creating, and we don't necessarily know how Spirit's going to fill it up. But we do know that when we create this container, it allows us to have a willingness and an openness to attract our greatest good to us. And so all month, we are going to be diving deep with the visioning process. And today, I'd love for you to get a pencil and paper. You might want to have one handy. While I take you through a visioning process, you'll be able to come back to this recording and do this as often as you like. It is like building muscle. And so I want to set it up a little bit. When we do visioning, what happens is that we are doing some deep listening. It's not strategic planning. It's not. If there's a bunch of stuff that you really have in front of you that you really want to take care of, I invite you to put that down on a piece of paper and push it to the side. That's the parking lot. You can come back to that later. Visioning is about deep listening. It's about being curious. It's about allowing yourself to get quiet enough to let something come through. It's still you, but it's that part of you that is deeply connected with your higher wisdom self. And so when you vision, you might hear direct phrases, you might hear nothing. You might see beautiful pictures, you might see nothing. But the idea is you're creating space. And as you create that space, you begin to hear and to catch what it is the divine wants to experience by means of you. So if you're ready, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes as we start the visioning process. And it sounds very much like a spiritual mind treatment with some questions in the middle. And so as you take a breath and close your eyes, I invite you to feel that breath in your body and allow yourself to really get quiet. And because visioning is a process that we allow ourselves to really be used by Spirit, I invite you now to think of a person or a place that brings you great joy. And in this moment, I invite you to connect with it. To connect with that joy. It might be a simple pleasure, like ice cream before bed. Or it could be a person who's really important in your life. It could be something, some entertainment that made you chuckle. Just allow yourself to feel that joy for a second. Breathe it in and allow it to open your heart and your mind so that we can connect deeply with that power within us that is forever animating our life. It is forever bringing things forward to us. It is forever doing all the things that we don't know how to do and don't need to know how to do. For we are absolutely one with this beautiful thing that makes the grass grow. And we allow ourselves in this moment to be very connected with it as we stay curious and we take the moment here to live in the questions. And so the first question that I want to ask, and I'll ask these in the first person. What is God's highest idea for my life? What is it that Spirit wants to experience by means of me? And we listen with an open heart. And we trust whatever comes forward. It doesn't have to make sense. We're just listening. And in this listening mode, as we continue to hear or to experience whatever it is we need to experience, we stay curious. And I ask the question, what is it that I need to let go of for this highest expression of the divine to experience itself as me? And again, we just listen. knowing that there's continuing to be a voice that's coming through you, no matter how subtle it is. It may sound like your voice, but it uses your imagination, and it is your higher wisdom self. We ask the question, what is it that I need to embrace for this highest vision to come forward? What is mine to do, and mine to be, and mine to give? And we listen with an open and surrendered heart. And then finally, is there anything else we need to know? Is there anything else we need to understand? Is there anything else we need to catch for this highest vision to be made manifest by means of us, to be expressed by means of us? And again, we listen. So trusting that whether there was time in this little window that we created this morning for this process, knowing that more will be revealed, knowing that even if you caught just a snippet of things, that this is a beginning. And so we simply trust. We trust that there's a power and a presence that wants to speak to us, that wants us to do that deep inner listening, knowing that it isn't something that's separate from us, but it is something that moves from inside of us. And so we trust that whether there was anything that happened in this short period of time, or perhaps things will become clearer in a conversation or an exchange that you have, or maybe in a dream, trusting that this is just the beginning of a beautiful conversation that we will be having all month long, looking at the powerful process of visioning and looking at how being open to possibilities really does help us to be engaged. And so if you would please open your eyes and come back into the space with us and take a deep breath and know that you can take as much time as you want with this process, but it oftentimes is good when you're doing visioning to keep a pace with it, not quite as quick as I did here on our broadcast this morning, but if you let it go too long, sometimes our thinking, strategizing, problem-solving mind gets involved, and we don't want that. What we really want to do is to catch that bigger idea. If this is the first time you've done it, I encourage you to try it again. I encourage you to use the month of March to be really open to possibility and allow yourself to be in that space where you can catch what it is that the divine wants to know as your life. For we don't live, while we are individuated expressions of the divine, there is no private good. That each one of us is giving the divine an experience that's unique and powerful, that only we can give it. And visioning helps us tap into that, into that what I would call third kingdom consciousness, and experience it at a whole nother level, at the mystical realm, if you will. Now, I also invite you to Pay attention to what's happening around you. Notice if there's suddenly certain synchronicities, the right conversation, somebody calls you that you haven't heard from for a while. You pick up a book and you open it to the perfect page. Visioning creates that container for us, and what I know about what's going on in our world right now as we close in on a full year of being in a pandemic worldwide is that there is an evolutionary process that is happening, and it's getting faster. And this practice of visioning is a beautiful, gentle, powerful way to engage that evolutionary process so that you can really step into what's yours to do as we all get vaccinated and we begin to re-enter the world. Do you really want to re-enter the world in the same place you were before of all this? So, my friends, it is my invitation to you to go ahead and try this on for size if you haven't done visioning before. And if you've done visioning before, but it's been on the shelf for a while, I invite you to dust it off, because we're really going to use it this month. This is the month for us to really begin to be open to greater possibility. So I'd like to end with a vision blessing. And so if we'll change the slide, please. And this is a call and response. And so I will speak the invitation, and I will invite you, wherever you are, to say the response out loud. May you walk the path of your vision. May you always be open to your vision. May your ears hear the truth of your vision.
My ears hear the truth of my vision.
May your mouth speak the love of your vision.
My mouth speaks the love of my vision.
May your eyes see the evidence of your vision.
My eyes see the evidence of my vision.
And may your heart be opened by your vision.
My heart is opened by my vision.
Thank you, friends. I'll see you next week, and so it is.